7 years ago, after closing on our land and after I started spending time up on our property trying to figure out just what I could do with it, that's when I had my first interaction with a moose. Since then, on occasion, the moose show up, but unfortunately, there's way more traffic up our road and way more going on in this neck of the woods. And so that moose that you saw at the beginning of the video is the first moose that we have seen in every bit of 2 years. So we're happy to see him around. And I'm pretty sure that cow moose is about a 3-year-old calf that came right through our backyard a few years back when the calf was maybe only a few months old. So even though life is changing up here, it makes me happy to see that the moose and the other animals are still around, even though I don't see them as often as I'd like to. It used to be that it was a genuine adventure as I was coming up to work on our property, trying to figure out what I could actually do with this hillside ground, trying to figure out if it was reasonable to build a house and live up here. But regularly I would have interactions with all different kinds of animals. Whether it was a snake or a porcupine, it was a lot of fun when I would come up here and work in those early days, because you could tell the animals were not used to having humans around, at least on a regular basis. And now, because the road gets used way more than it used to, and simply because there's just way more going on up here, we don't see the bigger animals like the moose very often.
That's crazy. It feels humongous in here.
My oldest son, Rhett, came up to inspect the shop. It is very obvious that the winter we just went through was very, very hard on the wildlife. From the little voles all the way up to the cow moose. It is thought that in our little basin right here, we may have had as much as a 90% loss with wildlife after this year's winter. The fawns of the year are almost non-existent this year, which means next year, assuming we don't have another winter like this, there should be 2 or 3 fawns to every doe running around the place. At least that's what we hope for. I rode the fence line up on the very top of our property for the first time this year, and the snow was so unbelievably heavy that it pushed all the barbed wire off of the fences. It even bent some of the T-posts, and when you see that happen, that is not normal. So not only did the wildlife take a hit this year, but all of the fencing around the place did too. So at some point this summer, I'm going to have to get up on top of the hill and fix all of that barbed wire fencing that we reinstalled last summer with the help of some of you guys. All of that fencing now is going to have to be fixed again. After going through that extreme winter that we went through, we now have the opportunity to learn from it, fix the things that need to be fixed, and prepare for any future storms. But I'm telling you, if we go through a winter like that again in my lifetime, it might be too soon. Because even with a little skid steer, it was a full-time job just trying to figure out where we could put snow. So as soon as I get all of the drywall finished here in the shop and get the shop painted, I've got to focus on some of these important things around winter, like firewood. I have lots of dead and dried maple, but none of it's cut into firewood. At some point over on the new property, my plan is to create a designated spot just for firewood. So as I'm thinning the property up on the mountain above that property, I can bring any maple that needs to be processed down to a specific place where I can keep the equipment necessary to process the firewood. Then I don't have to do it right next to the house. We'll simply stack what we need next to the house to get us through winter, but have the majority of the firewood bucked up into at least usable pieces. Then as we need it, we can split it. But because firewood is so important to our lifestyle, I feel like we need to have a place where, regardless of the weather, we can split firewood and stack it, and where we can also have an abundance of maple curing for next year's firewood. Someone recently sent me a message saying they could not understand why I would burn anything that could be used as firewood. Meaning their question was, why do I burn the brush piles instead of using every possible piece of scrap for firewood? Take a look. This is why. We have enough maple for 100 lifetimes. We have so much firewood on our property that there's almost no possible way we could ever run out. So when I burn brush piles and when I do cleanup with wood that could potentially be used as firewood, I'm burning the brush with this in mind. When I cut down maple trees that have to be thinned, I keep the green maple for the future firewood. Once maple dries out and cures, it gets very hard to cut. I prefer to buck it up and cut it into firewood when it's still green. So any old, dead, and dying trees that may be on our property, if they're not usable for firewood, they've got to be piled up and burned. And the fastest way to go through the thinning process on our property is to pile up the unusable wood and burn it. The one thing that maple does very well is it burns very hot. So once the brush piles have burned up, the char that's left over gets graded back into the dirt, and the rest is history. And there may come a day when I can use a chipper instead of burning the brush piles, but because of the quantity of dead and dying debris and brush on our property, the only way I will ever get through this in my lifetime is to pile the unusable wood up and burn it. And the one thing the maple does very well is it burns incredibly hot, which really keeps the smoke to a minimum, and it burns up fast. All across the world, especially in third world countries, one of the leading causes of death in children is smoke inhalation caused by open pit fires that are used to either cook or heat with in their homes. So the wood that is burned to cook or heat with in these homes is in some cases slowly killing these children, or at least causing major lung problems because of the smoke inhalation. But if you walked into our home on a cold winter day and recognized the fire burning in our fireplace, you would notice that you don't smell smoke. Our clothes don't smell like smoke. But as we burn the fires to heat our home, we don't have smoke in our house. Our 30-year-old wood stove burns more than efficiently enough to heat our home without polluting the air in our house. So after years of cutting and thinning and burning and cleaning up brush piles, this is all that's left right behind the house. This is the very first part of our property where I started thinning the trees, and my goal was to keep them about 30 to 40 feet apart. My opinion has changed. My new goal is to put a few more trees in the mix, and on the new property I'm going to thin it, but not quite to this extreme. And any of the wood that can be used will be used, and the rest will be burned. Since thinning all of these trees, I have never planted any grass seed on this hill. And after all these years, the grass is finally coming in a way where it'll choke out the invasive weeds, and I can put the animals up on the hill and graze the pastures off in the summer times. The point I'm trying to make around the firewood and around burning the brush piles is that if it's done properly and done correctly, it is by definition sustainable. Carbon is one of the fundamental building blocks of life. One of the nearby universities teaches a series of courses on biochar. I may reach out to the professor that teaches the course on biochar and see if his students want a field trip and a place to do a real-life study. I'm trying to avoid talking about drywall completely, but if you're paying attention, this is the second coat on the ceiling that I am just about to be finished with. So hopefully a little sanding, a little touch-up, and the ceiling will be close to done. I really don't even want to bring it up and talk about it, but climate change and green energy are now just as loaded of a conversation as anything political. And I'm certain that even burning a few brush piles and burning our trash, our carbon footprint is significantly smaller than the average family. And most certainly smaller than all the people that are preaching the need for climate change and green energy at the moment. And ironically, heating our house with wood in the wintertime is part of the reason our carbon footprint is as small as it is. I'm making progress on the drywall, and I should have all of the taping and texturing completely finished by the end of the week. In the first part of next week, we should start on painting. But every afternoon we're getting these summertime storms that do wonders for the trees and the grass, but make it hard to work outside, so timing couldn't be better. We thank you guys for taking time to watch our videos, and until the shop is completely finished, I think we're going to cut back to just one Sunday video a week for a while. This will help me get back on track with some of the projects and ultimately get the shop done as fast as I can. Thank you guys for watching. Be safe, and we will see you in about a week.